So, here we are, it's about 2 weeks until the brand new Nintendo console launches, and along with it, Mario Kart World. I would say that I'm reasonably excited for Mario Kart World. It's the first new Mario Kart game in 11 years, and by all accounts, it looks like Mario Kart. Mario Kart is just fun, you know, it's a fun franchise. It's got a really expansive roster, the new courses look like a lot of fun. I even really like the carts. I know they got rid of the whole customization element, but honestly, I'm totally down with them going back to more deliberately designed carts for this game. You know, with that being said, I definitely have some concerns about Mario Kart World going into the launch. You know, with a bold new direction like Mario Kart World is attempting to take here, it also brings with it some risks. And I think that's fine, you know, I honestly encourage bold risk-taking for long-running series like Mario Kart over just doing more of the same old, even if it doesn't necessarily always pay off. And I have no idea if any of the risks that they're taking are gonna pay off yet. I don't know. We still got about 2 weeks to go until we know about that for sure. So I don't want to come across as like overly negative or anything in this video, because like I said, I mean, I am reasonably excited for this new Mario Kart game. I just also have a smattering of concerns to go along with it, so consider this video a bit of a documentation of these concerns that I can revisit, or we can revisit, I don't know, and see if any of it holds up, if any of it holds any water when the game is officially in our hands. I think I'll just start and end this video with my two biggest concerns. So let's kick it off. One of the biggest and probably riskiest steps that Mario Kart World is taking is turning Mario Kart into an open world game. From the outset, it sounds ambitious and it sounds cool. And to an extent, it definitely is. But it's also where I get the most uneasy. Because, like, you know, the thing is that bigger doesn't necessarily always mean better, and I'm not 100% sure how to feel about this yet for Mario Kart of all things. Open world games pride themselves on their expansive exploration, you know? It's like, go explore the world and discover all that it has to offer. But my thing is, okay, but what about after I've explored everything? I can't really think of any instances where I've played an open world game and felt compelled to go re-explore it all over again at a later point in time. I know it's more of a personal preference for sure, and maybe you feel differently, but like after I've seen everything that it has to offer, after I've done everything, it kind of loses a bit of its luster. Take Breath of the Wild, for instance. It was a fantastic game to play through once. I enjoyed everything it had to offer once. Then the idea of like starting all of that over and just re-exploring the same world over again. It's a daunting task, for one thing, but the appeal is significantly lessened because I know what the game is going to throw at me. Whereas Zelda games of old have more tightly designed and clever puzzles to offer in shorter and quicker bursts, you know? It's a more concentrated delivery of those elements that I enjoy. Whereas Breath of the Wild takes those things and spreads them out and gives me a bunch of open space to deal with in between all that. It's a big part of why I didn't enjoy Tears of the Kingdom, because it was just literally the same world again. It felt like retreading old ground. Mario Kart World, obviously, is just, it's much more than just its open world, right? I mean, it's about the courses, it's about the race courses, it's about the racing. But it does just kind of stink, like, maybe just a little bit to know that, like, once I've explored the world, once I've had my fill of it, suddenly a remarkable chunk of the game becomes kind of a bit less appealing for the long run. And so let's talk about those courses a little bit. I would say that, like, a pretty good chunk of the game looks pretty nice. You know, like, good chunk of those courses, they look pretty fun to race on. There have been a couple of instances from courses that I've seen that, I don't know, almost feel like less Mario Kart-ish than we've seen in the past. Like, I don't know if that makes any sense. You know, I look at some of the returning courses, like, for instance, Peach Beach, and it feels just like so much less, like, vibrant than it used to. Or even something like, what is it, Choco Mountain, Choco Mountain, I think it is. And they completely, like, industrialized it. It really just kind of lost its original appeal and luster. And so to an extent, like that's just the way that it's gonna be, because it's a big interconnected open world. They kind of had to homogenize these courses to make them feel like they connect and are part of a living, breathing world, you know? But I don't necessarily know how to feel 100% about that just yet. I think part of the appeal of the old Mario Kart courses is that they could have their own very unique and varied themes because they didn't have to try to feel like they were all connected in one big world. I'm not even like super confident that this point that I'm making is even gonna stick in the end because, like I said, a lot of what we've seen in this game I think looks fantastic. It's just, you know, a couple of instances where things have looked a little like, I'm looking at Peach Beach. I'm looking at Peach Beach especially. I'm like, come on, that doesn't look like Peach Beach. You could have just named that any old beach and I wouldn't have known. I would know no better, aside from this like little sliver of race course right here. But no, where things actually get like really iffy for me are with the intermissions, the in-betweens for the courses. A lot of them are just kind of these wide linear stretches of road with not a ton going on them. They don't feel as like tightly or creatively designed necessarily as the courses themselves. And again, this is kind of a spot where like I'm concerned about them for the long run, but I don't necessarily know how I might feel racing on them in practice, you know? Because on one hand, you know, I think about it, and going from course to course, racing on these long stretches of road, I could totally see it just feeling like these really big, long race courses at the end of the day. And you might not even really think too much about the fact that you're on like the in-betweens between the courses because you're just continuously racing, and that's kind of cool. But at the same time, if they're really not that interesting, if you're just racing on a pretty whatever, you know, dual lane highway to get to the next course, I don't know, I feel like I might just feel like, well, I'd rather just be on the next course. I feel like it'll be less of an issue in the mode like where you are just racing from course to course continuously, but they also have it set up where, you know, you'll complete a course and then as a part of the next race, you're racing on these intermission laps, and then you just do one lap around the next course. The first 2 laps are part of that like long stretch of road. And in cases like that, it'd be like, yeah, I would rather just probably do a Grand Prix and get my 3 laps around the next course, where all the design ingenuity went, you know? And like, that is an option. That is an option to just do the Grand Prix. But again, you know, much like the open world point that I made earlier, at that point, it's a big part of the game's appeal that is being lost. Because they want you to be excited to race on these courses. It's a part of this $80 package. But if they're not fun to race on after a while, if they lose that appeal, I don't know, it kind of just sours the experience a little bit. It makes it less replayable overall, which is a big part of the appeal for something like Mario Kart. And not every game is designed to be replayable for just endless hours, you know? A lot of games you experience once and then you're done, and that's just the way it is. And in the case of open world games, that's how I feel about a lot of those. But something like Mario Kart is kind of meant to be, you know, pretty substantially replayable. And I'm not saying that these things, these elements aren't necessarily gonna mix too well. I just don't know, you know? That's why these are concerns that I'm speaking about right now. As far as we know, there are like a little over 30 courses in this game, which again is fine on paper. It's a lot less than is currently available in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, including the booster pass. There's a lot more to do in that game. Again, it's a new game. This is a new game, so it's fine that they're going to be able to build up to that point, but like, here's my concern about that. Like, the thing about adding new content to this game is that it's not as simple as just creating new courses that they can push out like, you know, every 2 or 3 months. It's a very meticulously crafted open world now that they are going to have to add on to. So if that means adding new continents with new courses, new expansive layouts, new open world challenges and missions to complete. That stuff is going to take some time. I wouldn't expect future DLC and content to come to this game at a very quick pace. And again, for some, like, that'll be fine. I don't even necessarily know how I feel about that myself. It really just depends on how enjoyable the base game is. And who knows, you know, by the end of this game's lifespan, it may not even matter, you know? I'm making assumptions here, but assuming that there's just gonna be a shit ton of courses by that point, the beginning of this game's lifespan probably really isn't gonna matter. And there's obviously gonna be plenty to do in this game, between exploring the open world, completing missions, racing on courses, all that kind of stuff. I guess what it boils down to for me is concerns over the replayability of it all. It's kind of starting to look like Nintendo's answer to moving some of their franchises forward is taking an open world approach. And I don't necessarily think that's always the right way to go. Zelda has done it, Mario has dipped his toes into it with Bowser's Fury, and now we have Mario Kart World. Just because they can, it doesn't necessarily mean they should, and it doesn't necessarily mean they shouldn't either. I know, I'm doing a lot of flip-flopping here. I'm being wishy-washy, and that's because we don't have the game yet. I mean, I can't state any solid opinions about this game yet. And honestly, I mean, I am just hoping that all of these words that I've said today are gonna be null and void by the time the game comes out anyway. And to an extent, I'm sure it probably will, because like I said, I mean, I'm reasonably excited for this Mario Kart game. I know, as a baseline, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm gonna have fun playing it. And maybe that's all I need, you know? I'm just not totally convinced yet that it has what it takes to become my favorite Mario Kart game. And I do like the look of some of the new mechanics they've added, like being able to jump and drive on walls and stuff. Like, that stuff is cool, but I also don't know how well utilized that stuff is gonna be. I haven't seen like a ton of instances where I can imagine myself finding jumping and driving on walls to be useful, but I don't know. I guess we'll see when the final game releases in 2 weeks. I can't believe it! It's 2 weeks away at the time of recording this. I don't know when this video is coming out. So yeah, these are just some concerns. Just some concerns that I have going into Mario Kart World. You guys share any of these sentiments? Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. Either way is fine. Again, I'm not firmly putting my foot down about any of this. They're just things that I'm wondering about. They're things that are bouncing around in my mind that I thought, you know, let's just get them out in the open. Let's put them out there. Let's get a little discussion going and see what everybody's thinking. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I can't wait to race around as new Donkey Kong. I love him. Look at that guy. Like this video if you haven't already. Subscribe if you want to see more things, hear more words from my face. And in the meantime, I'll catch you guys in the next one.